in our series about coping with difficult adult children. Now, this week we're going to talk about manipulation, and I'm going to start on a humorous note. And you may say, how is that possible? How is it funny to be manipulated? Well, my comment here is this. If you've parented any children at all, you know that they come out of the womb knowing how to manipulate us. It starts early and it's aggressive. And if you don't believe me, spend some time with a 2-year-old. You will know. They figure out very early on how to wrap us around their little fingers. Sometimes it's fun and good and we love it, and other times it's frustrating. But manipulation is part of the human condition, and it can be funny and comical, and it can also turn ugly and emotionally damaging really fast. So let's talk about it in a little more serious tone here. What is manipulation? Well, it's being handled or controlled or influenced, and it can be done in a negative way. That is typically the way we think when we think about manipulation. Unscrupulous activities among human beings. That's manipulation. And it does end up in really emotionally unhealthy relationships. So we don't want to let the 2-year-old continue to manipulate us all our lives, right, grandparents? We hope we didn't train our children to be manipulators, and we definitely don't want them to train their children, our grands, to be that way. So how do we recognize this type of behavior? And there are several ways that I've either found or experienced, okay? And you can probably relate to a lot of these. Emotional pressure in a relationship. If you loved me, you would just do this. That's manipulative language. And we just have to learn not to fall prey to that kind of talk and discussion, not act on it. Dramatics in a relationship. Oh, we've all seen the drama queens and kings, and they are so good at bending our emotions sometimes until we are just worn out. And at some point we have to stop and say, no, everything is not a sky falling issue. Let's back up and kind of look at things in a realistic manner and talk about things not from a dramatic standpoint. One of the things that always comes to mind with me when I think about the drama queens and kings is the Chicken Little story. Remember that? The sky is falling, and eventually nobody's listening anymore. And then there really is a crisis. That's what we want to avoid. We don't want to get to the point where we're not hearing when there is a genuine need. What about creating feelings of fear, obligation, or guilt in other parties? This is classic bullying. You know, it's also, interestingly enough, classic victim playing. You know, we can play the victim. That kind of goes along with the Chicken Little story. But bullying has become a major issue in our culture. And I think we see it exploding as, you know, people are struggling with the results of pandemic, you know, changed cultural norms and mandates and whatnot that people are struggling with. And there's kind of a bullying factor underlying that isn't healthy for us as humans in our relationships with one another. What about somebody twisting what you say to make you question yourself? That's kind of a classic manipulation tactic. Make you doubt yourself. If your children are doing that to you, put a stop to it. Strings attached to favors. That's not a good one either. Meanness covered by just kidding, or meanness done in front of other people. You see spouses fall into this sometime where they make barbs at each other in front of other people. I've seen it. It's uncomfortable to be with somebody when that's going on because it makes you wonder what's going on at home. If they're willing to say these kind of things to each other in public, in front of friends and other family, what are they really doing at home? So masking meanness by joking or doing it in public where it can't be called into question without causing a fight. Those are kind of the classic ways that people manipulate one another. How do we respond? Now, disclaimer, I am not a psychologist, okay? But I have lived enough life and been manipulated enough that I've learned some things to help me not respond to it and put an end to it, hopefully. So here's what Dr. Donna has to say, okay? First of all, recognize it. Watch for the signs. If you're uncomfortable in a relationship or a conversation, even if it's with your own child, watch for the signs of what's going on, identify it, and decide to take some action. And that's the next thing. Call it out. Say, I don't choose to let you talk to me that way. I will not be manipulated. Whatever you have to say in your particular circumstance. The other, and kind of along with calling it out, is just choosing not to participate. Somebody one time gave me some great advice because I was struggling with a situation, and it was kind of the emotional manipulation. And they said, well, just tell them you're sorry they feel that way. And nothing else. Don't argue. Don't question. Just, I'm sorry you feel that way. Acknowledge that they're feeling strange or acting strange, but don't engage when you know it's manipulation. And I had a conversation like that, and I had to say, I'm sorry you feel that way several times in that conversation. But that was a turning point in our relationship. And it has never been manipulative like that again. So that's part of what I say. When you call the behavior out and you respond in not an aggressive way, sometimes, and I know not always, but sometimes it changes the course of a relationship. And especially if we're talking about adult children that we want to have relationships with, it's worth having that moment of discomfort to change it and make it better, right? And then get help if it's needed. Manipulation can turn into abuse, so get help. There are plenty of professionals out there who are much better versed than I at how to change and stop some of this behavior. So I may joke about, being Dr. Donna, but in all seriousness, if it's dangerous, get professional help. And then finally, choose relationships wisely. And I know that sounds harsh when we're talking about dealing with our children, but there are some times when distance is a little bit necessary. And it may one day turn out to be what changes the final course of the relationship. I'm a firm believer that relationships can be healed so long as we are living. So I always hold out hope. If there's difficult relationships in my life, I hold out hope for them to get better, and I would encourage you to do the same. But do also understand that sometimes we have to put distance between us and a manipulator for our own preservation, for our emotional health, and maybe even sometimes for our sanity. So, difficult topic when we're talking about how to deal with difficult adult children, but we may as well face these issues. We live with a lot of them, and it's just time to start calling them out and fixing them. Be grand, my friends.